Hi there, boys and girls. It's Miss Deb again. And the book I chose this time is called Ada's Violin. And it's actually the story of the Recycled Orchestra of Paraguay. This is based on a true story about a little girl. Well, let's see what this one is about. Ada Ríos grew up in a town made of trash. Each morning, at dawn, Ada heard the first garbage trucks rumble and roll down the road to Cateura. Beep, beep, beep. Backing into the landfill, they tipped their loads up and crash. The trash came tumbling down, 1,500 tons each day. Ada and her friends watched as the gancheros, or recyclers, scrambled, tearing into plastic bags with long-handled hooks, pushing aside moldy produce and grabbing anything they could recycle or sell. The going rates? 5 cents for a pound of cardboard, 10 cents for a pound of plastic. Oh, look here. This noisy, stinking, sweltering slum was not the most nurturing neighborhood. Ada watched, her eyes wide, but she didn't say much. And yet she liked to imagine each garbage truck was a box of surprises. One never knew what might be inside. Her father had found appliances, toys, perfumes, and antique watches. One woman even discovered a small box full of gold jewelry. Little did Ada know there was a bigger surprise waiting for her in the landfill. I always remember the saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. It's all in how you look at things. Every day when Ada's parents went to work, Grandmother Miriam cared for Ada and her little sister Noelia. Grandma loved to sing rock and roll songs from the 1960s. The girls grew up to the tunes of the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and Creedence Clearwater Revival. Ada loved to sing too, but only when no one was listening. Oh, how many of you have grandparents? I remember my grandmother doing a lot of cooking. Oh, her cakes and cookies were always the best. Ada's dad brightened the night with stories and songs of great musicians. He turned up the radio and pointed out the sounds each instrument made. Ada heard one above all others. Zing went the string of the violin. Look here. When the girls started school, Grandma returned to work as a recycler, collecting bottles and cans in the city. Classes let out at noon. Young Ada was in charge of Noelia until her parents were done with work. At first, the girls stayed close to home, playing with Grandma Miriam's doggies and making sandcakes in the dirt. Soon they joined their cousins, playing hide and seek or a game of handball in the streets. How many of you play with your brothers and sisters? And you might actually have to help take care of them. Maybe help them do their homework or get them something to eat. You're doing a wonderful job. In time, they ventured further afield, walking down to the bodega to get candy. Ooh. But Ada noticed the teenagers hanging out in the alleys, grumbling about life in the landfill looming ahead. What would happen to them? To her? To her little sister? She watched as the older kids turned to gangs and got into fights. Oh, my. One day, when Ada was 11 years old, her grandmother saw a sign posted on the wall of a chapel. Violin, guitar, cello taught Saturdays at 8 a.m. Favio Chávez. How Grandma had longed to learn music. Too late for her, maybe, she thought, but not for her granddaughters. She signed them up without asking them or their parents. Ada's heart sang out. Thanks to her abuela, she could leave her worries behind and learn to play. Well, it seems like things are looking up for Ada and her sister. At first class, the teacher, Favio Chávez, had 3 guitars and 2 violins to share. Ada chose violin right away, but 10 children had signed up. Frustrated, Ada and her friends found that there were not enough instruments to go around. Now, this is the time where it would be easy to give up. And I think we've all had times where something has happened to us and we think, what's the use? We're just going to give up. Well, let's see what happens to Ada. And there was a bigger problem. Everyone quickly realized that the children would need to practice at home, but it wasn't safe to be seen with an expensive instrument in Cateura, where a violin is worth more than a house. Watching the children play amid broken glass and rusty metal, Senor Chávez knew he had to do something. He remembered a band called Les Luthiers that made its own instruments. That was it! He asked Nicholas, Cola, Gomez, a ganchero and carpenter, for help. Senor Gomez found a discarded drum with a big hole in it. What could he use to fix it? He picked through the trash and discovered an old X-ray film. Would that work? It did! Senor Gomez kept experimenting, and others, like Tito Romero, helped. Inventing instruments wasn't easy, but they fiddled around, discovering which materials hit just the right notes. They transformed oil drums into cellos, water pipes into flutes, and packing crates into guitars. See them working? Wow. Up, look at that. Huh? It looks so awesome. Look at those instruments. Soon there were enough instruments for all the children who wanted to play. Now, what instrument do you think Ada chose? Yep, that's right. Ada chose a violin made from an old paint can, an aluminum baking tray, a fork, and pieces of wooden crates. Worthless to thieves, it was invaluable to her. It was a violin of her very own. Senor Chávez set up a strict schedule of 3-hour lessons. The class had no classroom, so they played outside, despite the 100-degree heat and sudden downpours. At first, Ada and the others struggled. Sharps and flats clanged and clashed. Playing an instrument is a process. It doesn't matter if one is rich or poor, ugly, fat, thin. You cannot learn to play an instrument overnight, Senor Chávez told the children. Some kids decided it was too much work and gave up, but not Ada. After lessons, she would practice at home, sometimes 2 hours a day. See all of them practicing? Playing an instrument is hard work. It's not something that's magic and comes overnight. With her violin, Ada could close her eyes and imagine a different life. She could soar on the high, bright, bittersweet notes to a place far away. She could be who she was meant to be. Music is a wonderful thing. Oh, look, they're all playing. Look at this. I think they're playing a concert. As Ada's skill grew, so did her confidence. Once timid, she now took center stage playing solos. She helped teach the younger children, too. Her teachers and fellow students took note. When she was 12 years old, Ada was named first violinist. Imagine she was first at something. Word of this extraordinary orchestra spread, and soon they were asked to perform in other cities and even other countries. Whoa, look at all the countries. Looks like they went to Hollywood, California, Brazil, maybe India, Thailand. Look at all those exciting places. Music can carry you anywhere. Ada and her friends flew on their first airplane, stayed in their first hotel, swam in the bright blue waters of Rio de Janeiro, sampled their first pastries and pineapple, and saw sights they never imagined. The world dazzled them just as they dazzled the world. Look at this. When Ada was 16, the orchestra received a very special invitation. They were asked to tour with a world-famous rock band. We don't always think of a rock band in an orchestra. More than 35,000 people awaited them at their first concert stop in Bogota, Colombia. Ada was more than nervous. She didn't know how to enter or how to greet the audience. She went blank. She saw a giant stage with glaring lights and heard people screaming. Oh my gosh, look, they're screaming for them! But she didn't have to worry. As the Recycled Orchestra took the stage, the people who had paid to see the rock band cheered for them. The enormous audience sang and swayed to the music as the orchestra played, and as their performance came to a close, a crescendo of cheers, chants, and applause resounded across the park. The astonished kids bowed, grinning at one another. They had discovered the surprise waiting in the landfill. Burying the trash was music, and buried in themselves was something to be proud of. And that is Ada's violin. Now, you can make your own instruments if you want to, but always ask the permission of the adult in your house before you do that. You could use water bottles that are empty, put some rice in them, close the cap nice and tight, decorate it, and you have a shaker. You can even make your own band out of found items. Like we happen to have a lot of these plastic containers. Wooden spoon. What about some red Solo cups? Do you hear the difference in the sound between the plastic? You could get a couple different things, maybe even some pots and pans, and with your brothers and sisters, you could even do some type of a concert. Now keep in mind, you're not just banging on instruments. Your music is not just noise. It should be an organized sound. So maybe you want to use some rhythm patterns. Use some simple ones, like this one. Ta, ta, ti, ti, ta. That's a good one. Or someone can keep the steady beat. Ta, 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 ta. Ta, ti, ti, ta, ta.